Donald Trump back on Twitter this morning and taking another hit on one of his favorite targets, the media. This morning it is the New York Times. Here to discuss, CNN senior media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter, and CNN media analyst Bill Carter. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
So let's pull up the tweets. He is up early. He is watching the programs. Here's what he says. The failing at New York Times story is so totally wrong on transition. It's going so smoothly. Also, I've spoken to many foreign leaders. Then he tweets, I'm not trying to get top-level security clearance for my children. This was a typically false news story. And there's many more. This, in the context of the fact that last night Hope Hicks, his spokeswoman, said he's down for the night. Then he takes his family out to dinner at the 21 Club, leaving the press behind for the second time in, the week and a half that he's been president-elect. Why should this matter, Brian, to the American public?
Yeah, he might enjoy irritating the press by ditching us and heading out without us. But normally, presidents and presidents-elect travel with a protected press pool because those journalists are keeping track of the president on behalf of the American people. It doesn't matter that he went to dinner with his family, but it is good to know where he went, how long he was out for, and if anything happened while he was out. If anyone confronted him, if there were protesters, if there were fans. All of that information is helpful to know. These reporters keep track of the first draft of history, and that's why they matters not just for us, but for the viewers.
Mm-hmm. He seems to be having a struggle, the president-elect, separating what matters to him personally versus what matters to the position. These tweets this morning are irrelevant. He's good at pushing back against the media, but this is not what we've seen a president-elect do, and it's not because of Twitter as a mechanism of communication. It's what he focuses on. Is this something that's going to be a legitimate point of concern for his ability to focus on what he needs to going forward?
Well, it's been the same pretty much throughout the campaign. He's sort of a mercurial personality. He's not paying attention to big picture very often. The small picture gets his attention enormously. Plus, he's not particularly fact-based. So if something comes out and he says it isn't true, we don't know whether that's true or not, because we've seen him constantly saying things, that didn't happen, that didn't happen, that did happen.
So Chris's point about the office that he now holds versus the person, right? It was personal for him when he was the candidate.
Right.
Now he's the president-elect. It's a totally different ballgame.
It should be. You would think it's going to be. I think he's still kind of in that mode. We'll see if he can transition. Everything is about a transition now.
Right.
There's nobody ever been in this position before, I don't think, where he has had no experience at all in dealing with this.
And he's got people around him who don't have any
and they have no experience.
So it makes the people you put around you very important.
So important.
Brian, one of the positions that's getting a lot of buzz is press secretary Laura Ingraham. Known her a long time. I think she's very formidable, especially with certain political base. Identity that she has. But why do we care so much who the press secretary is?
She is the conduit, the liaison between the press corps, the people in the White House press briefing room, and the White House administration. So she will be the public face of this White House, along with Donald Trump and a few others. She has indicated she's interested in the job. She's also interested in a White House communications job, which is more strategic. One way or another, though, it seems like she will end up in the administration, unless there's some surprise coming down the road. She's been out there in interviews indicating her interest.
Big deal?
Yeah,
big deal because she's been bashing the media for years.
What should the American public know about her?
Well, it underscores the fact that there's going to be a combat, I think, with the media, because she has said that media that criticizes conservative point of view, not just that they're wrong, but they're anti-American. So she has really attacked people for disagreeing with her.
Yeah, question the patriotism of journalists.
Question the patriotism of journalists. I mean, it's a signal that this is going to be combat and hostility.
We've seen half a dozen signs of this so far. In the week since he was elected, we've seen half a dozen signs, whether it's tweeting about the New York Times, ditching the press pool, not giving interviews or having a press conference in the first week. Half a dozen signs that he is going to continue to be hostile.
He won't stop doing that until it stops working for him. So we'll have to see what happens.
It's all about the approval ratings.
Absolutely.
Right?
We'll see what the first wave says. Megyn Kelly making her rounds on with Anderson Cooper tonight. In this book, there's a lot of buzz about the victimization of Megyn Kelly as she sees it by Donald Trump. Is there any truth to this suggestion that in the book she tells a story about hearing that Trump was upset about what he was supposedly going to be asked in a debate early on about him and women? Is that story in the book?
Yes, it seemed like he was working the refs ahead of that famous first debate where she asked him in the first question about his record of misogyny. So it seems like he had some indication of what the question might be.
She puts that in her book.
That's right.
But she never mentioned it. She never mentioned it to her audience, though.
That's right. It was
and when she was going after CNN about Donna Brazile, and rightly so, she never brought this up in context of balance about what Trump may have known about questions.
That is right. It seems like she was withholding it for the book. Now, Bill and
Yes.
I both worked at the New York Times. We both wrote books. We both had to give up details we were learning for our books before we wanted
Yes.
to in the New York Times,
Exactly.
because that's how it works. If you've
Yeah.
got a scoop, you've got to
If
share
you're a
it with your
journalist.
audience.
If you're a
But
journalist,
Megyn Kelly chose
right.
not to share it.
If you're a journalist, the question
Yeah.
is that not her standard because she's really a commentator?
Well, yes. Look, she's crossed over as a pretty serious interviewer, but in this context, you really have to say, what was her motivation? Is her motivation to sell books, to make herself more
Come
famous, to
on.
get a big contract? These are questions, and I also wonder, why doesn't she point out that she had every opportunity when she did a one-on-one with Trump, later a personal interview, that she could have brought up these facts. She could have said, why did you bully me? Why did you try to degrade me?
didn't.
And she didn't do it then. She didn't do it then. She did it in the book instead.
I think you're being too tough on her, though. She's been a voice of reason on Fox. She is a journalist, and she's been doing a standout job speaking out about what the consequences of a bullying President Trump are.
I'm just saying, when you know something about one side and you know something about the other, you say both.
Yeah.
You don't play to advantage, and you don't play to advantage for yourself and make yourself the story. That's not what journalists do either. Anyway, gentlemen, as always, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. President-elect Donald Trump facing conflicts of interest as soon as he heads into the Oval Office. But remember, we've never had a president like him before with the kind of business interests that he brings in that go all around the globe. What